Welcome back to the Green Ninja channel. A very kind of sad kind of update, I guess. Uh, well, definitely sad. So, July 1st is here, and we talked a little bit about the injunctions that we're going to go through in Washington, or that we were hoping would go through in Washington, and they did not go through. The one specifically was the doctor-patient lawsuit that moved to be an injunction. So a little background on this for some of you that don't know. Since the 502 passed in Washington, there's largely been two markets in the cannabis industry, the recreational and the medical. Uh, it is long believed that the people, mainly in the state government, fought with the medical side of the market because it didn't want the state's regulation, because the state's regulation has turned out to be largely flawed, completely inefficient, and also just kind of blatant money grabs. So the medical industry, as they should have, fought against the state to keep the state as much out of the process while still becoming legitimate businesses so they can pay taxes. This apparently did not sit well with the state. So they decided to try and start changing the 502 law to merge the medical and recreational markets together. The initiative that did that was 5052, and Jay Inslee signed that, and he's, already not very liked, but now I guess he's even less liked. So we, as patients, now have to register with the state to be on a list so that we can get these added benefits of registering. I use air quotes because it sounds like they're just giving us permission, like mom and dad would, to, okay, you can have a sip off my beer, but if you register with the house, then you can have half a beer. But you can't buy any, kind of like holding your hand through every decision you make, micromanaging your life and stuff that they should have no business in. So the injunction with the doctor and the patient was rejected. About a month before the rollout date, and this is quoting from the Lane Powell attorney and counselor's article, Court Declines to Prevent Merger of Washington Medical and Recreational Marijuana Markets, written by David Spellman. So it's a little bit of an article and a kind of a Q&A with him, I guess. But it's not like a clickbait article. It's a real, actual citation kind of thing. So, a month before the rollout date, a medical doctor and marijuana patient sued the governor and others to block the merger. On June 30th, the federal court refused to stop the merger. The court and terminally ill patient argued that the new rules will chill their medical communications in violation of the First Amendment, but the court validly rejected their request for an injunction on jurisdictional grounds. They have no private claim under Controlled Substance Act, which is where they filed the lawsuit under. First Amendment or Supremacy Clause. The doctor and patient also failed to establish injury supporting a pretrial injunction. Okay, so I'm going to break this down for you. They filed the lawsuit and moved to be an injunction under the Controlled Substance Act. I think that the injunction itself would have moved if they had a better place to file the lawsuit in. But this is also seems like a very blatant dismissal of any sort of real concern. They used a lot of language in this article, like the record did not demonstrate a likelihood that the doctor and patient would prevail in challenging a new regime. No, I hate that. A new regime. What new regime? The same people are controlling it that they were 2 years ago. It's not a new regime. They also expressed that the communication between doctor and patients are not more at risk under the new law than under the old law. That's a load of crap, because I, as a patient, didn't need to register and be put on a list that the state has access to. So the fact that the state has access to that stuff automatically makes it less secure, because anybody who knows anything about technology knows that the state, albeit secure, is not the most perfect system. So I think that people are generally just kind of worried about that, because cybersecurity is a huge deal. I think that people are moving to be skeptical of the state having that kind of information, because even outside of the whole cybersecurity thing and potentials of being hacked by outside places, potential of the federal government raining down on the whole thing, and then they have a list of names and addresses and numbers and descriptions of the rooms and, blah, blah, blah. They have access to all that stuff and the patient records with the doctor. So it seems like it's a direct violation of the HIPAA laws, which we have to prevent the state from having that information. They also said that in addition to proving a likelihood or prevailing at trial, the doctor and patient were required to prove that they would likely suffer irreparable harm. The court ruled they merely proved potential versus required likely injury. So, in layman's terms, that basically says, well, if I don't get access to the medical cannabis that I've been able to have access to with the dispensaries, this could potentially make my terminal illness worse. As opposed to, if I stop using this exact product, I will die. And that has to be backed up by the doctor. This is, if they stop using this strain that comes from this dispensary, they will die. So that's the difference, is this could really hurt me versus this will hurt me. And the line there is, it's pretty gray and pretty blurry. So based on that, which also seems to me just head shaking. At the end of this, it says that transition brings uncertainties and challenges. Yeah. One way to respond to a transition is to file a lawsuit and move for an injunction. But moving for an injunction is dicey, except in a plain and clear case with a well-developed record. So, what he's saying here is, it's not impossible, but you have to be so precise in your language used and the records of your illness and how cannabis interacts with your illness, and also what happens if that cannabis is taken away. You have to have extensive records of that in order to have a clear-cut case, and also you have to have the right language, and you have to file the lawsuit under the right category. For it's this is seriously so convoluted, I can't even believe it. Like, just getting an injunction filed, and I imagine that there's a lot of money going into these lawsuits and injunctions. I know that they started a GoFundMe page last year, and I don't even know how much it raised, but the legal fees for this has got to be through the roof. And for this doctor and patient to come in here and basically say, you can't force us to incriminate ourselves, and the state court to turn around and go, yeah, we can, suck it, is pretty just sad. Because everybody from the medical industry has been warning the state, they've been warning the recreational users, they've been warning everybody about how the state is just running coups and being a cartel and strong-arming their way into this industry. And we've been saying it, and I don't know who all has listened to us, but we've been saying it for a long time, that the state is using things like Patient Protection Act and the Compassionate Care Act and those kind of verbiage in their legislation to hide their true intentions behind the porcelain mask of greed and the fact that they want to have total control over this. And the people that have total control over it were caught having secret meetings, and no one seems to give a damn. And so these people are just it seems too good to be true that these people are just making these changes arbitrarily to this initiative. And there are protests going on. There's lawsuits and injunctions being filed, and no one's looking into the Cannabis Control Board. And they're not going, why does everyone hate you? Because it's not even just the medical people that don't like the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board. It seems to be most people that look at them and just roll their eyes like, I can't believe they have that job. Anybody with an ounce of common sense regarding cannabis has looked at this and gone, that doesn't sound right. The fact that I can have 4 plants but only yield 3 ounces is entrapment. That's I can't even believe that they looked at that amount and that with that number of plants and said, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds like somebody who's never grown cannabis before. Sounds like somebody who's never smoked cannabis before. It sounds like somebody who maybe watched a couple of stoner movies and decided that 4 plants and 3 ounces was a good idea. Mainly because it seems like that amount is so conservative based on a recreational amount that anybody who's any sort of in real medical need is going to go through that 3 ounces in a week or two. And if you're making concentrates, that's even less. So to me, these amounts, and you can, if you register, you could have up to 15 plants, but that's all based on your doctor. So if your doctor says you can have 5 plants and have 10 ounces, then you can only get 2 ounces off of a plant. So you're pretty much restricted to small, super small plants, or you can grow, 1 plant and get 8 ounces off of it. It's so just, I can't believe that they're leaving this kind of decision in the hands of people who don't know anything about it. And if they do know enough about it, and they do know how much plants normally yield, and they still say 3 ounces if you unregister, then they're basically just saying, we're going to turn you into criminals, and there's nothing you can do about that. Because they just squashed the injunction over technicalities and completely ignore and disregard the huge issue here. And that is the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board is screwing over this market, and they are acting like a cartel, and they are strong-arming the medical industry out, and they're putting propaganda out there trying to villainize the medical market and say that they're Wild West unregulated pieces of crap, basically. And that's not a direct quote from anyone, but they try and villainize the medical community as this greatly unregulated, willy-nilly, you don't know if you're being harmed or not kind of thing, when if you look at the recreational market, has the same questions arisen from the recreational market. Is this safe? Do you enforce the pesticides? There's 250 allowed in Washington. And do you enforce those kinds of checks? And do you enforce the kind of things that you say you're going to enforce? And so with this, I believe that people are going to largely be moving for a lot of questions to be answered. And all of the answers that I've seen come from this have all been, you'll be fine, just wait and see, you'll be fine. And no one trusts the state. No one trusts the state. And they shouldn't, because they completely put their hands in a jar that wasn't theirs to put their hands in. They didn't ask the people. They don't even care what the people think. So if for anyone to think that this is about the patients, this Patient Protection Act, or this Compassionate Care Act, or whatever it is, I don't care what its name is. I don't care what it's for. And when the government does that and they put these nice little neat bows on these packages of corruption and greed, I don't care what it's called. It's ridiculous to think that after 80 years of it being illegal and demonized and villainized and run through the propaganda machine because people are intimidated by the hemp industry, it seems asinine that we'd trust the same people that kept it illegal and threw over, hundreds of thousands of people in jail and prison for it, and we're going to trust those same people who have incarcerated people professionally for 80 years that we're going to give them control. And we let them. We let them. So I'm going to smoke a bowl of the last dispensary cannabis that I may ever see in my life. And I have a little bit that I'll keep until it runs out. But I will say, as a cannabis patient under the medical cannabis here in Washington, the medical cannabis, although it has always had its flaws as far as the product is concerned, has always been way higher quality than anything that comes out of the recreational market. When your motivators for growing cannabis are nothing but economic, you don't care necessarily as much about the quality of the cannabis that you output because people buy crap anyways. And most of us are guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. I have no place to judge. I've bought, poor quality products in the presence of something better. Sure, depending on what it is. But the medical community, even though it has had its flaws, created the format for the industry that the 502 people took from them and then kicked them out of their own industry. They literally stole their lunch and kicked them out of the lunchroom and said, you can't come in. And we have other states like Alaska and Colorado and Oregon where you can grow better amounts. I think in Oregon, you can just, if you can have 3 plants, and that's all the language that's stipulated. So if you grow big plants in Oregon, grow them, I mean, whatever. But Washington seems to feel the need to micromanage your life. And I think that that is the absolute wrong approach. I think that these people in charge of this cannabis legislation need to be removed. And I don't know how we could possibly go about that. But the people on the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board have proved to be inept, inefficient, and ignorant of the information that lies directly in front of them regarding the industry that they are trying to regulate. We need people who understand what cannabis is about. We need people who understand how cannabis grows, the research that goes behind it, and we need to move forward with this so this industry can blossom and not be taken over by a bunch of people who are more concerned with their wallet than they are concerned with the industry that could potentially change the face of this country forever. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now and hit this, and we're going to go from there. For those of you that are in Washington, I want to know what you think. Because I'm one of those people, and I'm sure this has been fairly evident over the course of the last 2 years we've been a channel. Oh, so good. But over the course of the time that we've been a channel, it's been fairly obvious to most people that I don't particularly care for the micromanaging control over people's lives. I think that it's fairly obvious that you can make something illegal and people are going to find a way to do it anyways. You say up, they say down. You say left, they say right. You say hot, they say cold. You say no, they say yes. You say water, they say fire. It's just a part of human nature to do that. So for any body of government to say it's only legal on our terms kind of defeats the purpose of we're going to do it regardless. All this is going to do is the exact opposite of what they want it to do. And they're trying to reduce the black market here, but really all they're doing is fueling that fire. They're going to make that market bigger. That's obvious to everybody. So you say that people can't trade their medicine? What, are you going to follow everybody around? Are you going to put GPS tags on their product? Are you going to check up on them once a week. So if you've gone through that ounce yet, well, I'm gonna go over there and check your stash to make sure you don't have another strain in there. How are you gonna enforce that? The answer is you can't. But all you're doing is adding in stipulations that people are going to break, some knowing and some unknowingly, most unknowingly. And you're going to end up incriminating people for just trying to share some of their cannabis. And there will always be people that will exploit the law. There will always be people that will completely ignore the law. But for the law to be so just nauseatingly bad, it seems on purpose. And it feels like they're trying to tell us that they're working really hard at this. I highly doubt that. I'm calling your bluff. The only people that are working hard are the people that you just kicked out of the medical cannabis industry. And now, the industry that they helped build, you completely just face kicked them out of. Without remorse, without any opportunity, you just sent them on their ass. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. There are 502s out there that do put out high quality products. Absolutely. They do exist. However, it is going to take an immense amount of work for the 502s to be trusted in the way that any of people's favorite medical dispensaries were trusted. It's going to take a large effort from the 502s and from the storefronts to ensure high quality, to ensure that the testing is high, top quality for these guys, to make sure that, people are checking for, the heinous pesticides that shouldn't be used, to make sure that things like mold are being tested for, to make sure that there's shelf life on there so you know that you can't have, after 6 months, that product goes right back to the manufacturer or however they work it. But there has to be shelf life. Just like with anything that you could consume there, you have to know how long it's good for, right? So things like that, there has to be large efforts being moved forward through this for the people and the patients in Washington. Sorry, brain was trying to figure out the word. For the patients in Washington, there has to be a way for them to find the kind of information that makes them comfortable. This can't come from the state. The state can't do anything to make the patients trust the 502s or the storefronts. There's nothing the state can do. They've already forced them to go there. Now it is on the shoulders of the 502 growers and processors and storefronts to instill the kind of trust in the patients that they need in order to go to those places, to make sure that they can get clean and organic cannabis so they can supplement the fact that they can only grow like 6 ounces. And the cooperatives aren't much better, really. They aren't. And so, honestly, they're not better than the RCW collective gardens, but they aren't very good. So, with that being said, I'll end on this. We have to hold the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board accountable to making good decisions. We have to hold them accountable to the people that they are making these changes for. And when they, like the guy who just said that the ex-narcotics agent who was like, you can't, this is not a discussion. I'm so done hearing about this. Well, you know what? I don't care what you're tired of. We're going to have this conversation, and you're going to listen. So, I would love to have a real conversation with the current Cannabis Control Board. I want to sit in a room with them and figure this out. Because if they're not horrible people and they just need help, God, there's ways to figure it out. There's ways to get people involved in this who know something. You know? It's just crazy to me that these bad decisions are coming and they're acting like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, this is for your better good. Seems too good to be true. But as of right now, this is what we got to work with. So the future is uncertain for a lot of people. Uncertain for us. You know, what are we going to do in the future in regards to the channel? That all has to be figured out. But we'll make it work. As well as we can, we'll make it work. You know, we'll remain compliant with the law. And we'll figure it out. So you guys don't have to worry about us just kind of disappearing off the face of the earth. But depending on what becomes, you know, concrete and stone legal for us, things will definitely change next season for what goes on in the grow room. So if anything goes on in the grow room, because with this kind of hurricane storm of legislation going through, we're just never sure what's going to change or what's going to be reversed or what's going to be appealed and reversed. You just so crazy right now. And I'm curious of what Oregon and Colorado and Alaska think about what's going on in Washington. I want to know, if this was happening in your state, what would you do? How would you feel if, you know, in the states where it's not legal at all, if you were in a legal state and your state was doing this, how would you feel? Especially as a medical user, you know, specifically medical users, how would you feel in the situation should it arise in your state? Because I guarantee you, if your state has a medical law and a recreational law gets passed, you're in danger of this same thing happening to you. So how would you feel? Leave a comment down below if you're even still watching. This is a long video. I haven't done a video this long in quite a while, but this is an important one. So anyways, stay orangey, everybody. Always flush responsibly. Stay vigilant. Love each other. Or don't. You don't have to love everybody. But like and subscribe if you want to. And we love you. Goodbye.